football episode with Danny.
Yeah, with that shirt on, you should be embarrassed to do one.
Oh, here we go. Florida had a
But Doug, what's the biggest opinion or the hottest take you put out there recently, like on baseball? I know you talked about Soto's deal a lot.
Recent?
Yeah.
Recently, we haven't done much. We've done more Olympic stories.
Okay.
Stuff that happened in the village. One of my teammates went over there. We got in a casino fight, and we also had. Oh yeah. So and we also had Brent Abernathy won $150,000. He sat down. Ben Sheets was sitting at a poker table. Long story short, he got up. 2 hands later, Brent got a royal flush. So the place went nuts. So it was. So we're doing that stuff. Kind of waiting for Alonso to sign, and we're going to tie into try to grab Hosmer on and do a couple episodes with him. But basically, I would say the Aaron Judge drop ball was a big one for us.
Yeah, what'd you say?
Just pretty much, I always say this. I think you guys can agree. In baseball, the game exposes your biggest weakness at its most opportune time. And for that, base running defense, the little things kind of did the Yankees in. And that was kind of get us going a little bit. But I'm looking forward to doing more college baseball stuff. And when the season gets cranking, kind of do follow in y'all's footsteps. How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
Your hero, AJ. You're following your
Well,
hero.
he stole your hat, so you're mad at him.
No, it's nice.
I just figured I'd wear a hat frontwards for once on the
right.
show and be a little different. So that's kind of why I did this one.
Well, you're also bald now, so you and
okay.
Kratz have that in common.
That's by choice. Being your friend for 40 years will make you lose all your hair.
Makes you lose hair.
All right, so, I mean, we have to talk to you about current issues in the game.
Of course.
I mean, where do we start? I mean, there's so much happening with free agency. Ask him your question about the Orioles. He'll give you an honest answer.
Oh, about this year versus
You think
last
the
year?
Orioles, the way they're constructed right now, after Kittredge signing, they're better than the 2024 Orioles that got swept in the first round?
But had Burns and their 44 home
Santander,
run bat.
Burns.
I think they're going backwards.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Anytime you lose a number one in Burns, I think it's tough to replace. I thought you were going to hit me with the Yankee question about the Soto versus what they've signed already.
Oh,
But,
we'll do that too.
Well, you can go ahead and you just go ahead and transition to that if you
That's
want.
next.
I think if you read Juan Soto's face in the World Series, Game 2, he looked like he was done. Like it almost looked like I've done everything I could possibly do. I just need a little help, and he wasn't getting it. And I feel like you could see his his whole demeanor changed. He still had great at bats. He still played really well, but it was almost like he was flat out exhausted. I think it was a must sign for the Mets. They're always for headlines. I know when I was there, they signed Beltran to a huge deal, and it was a big ordeal. But I think the Yankees are better off. I'm curious to see how long Max Fried holds up. I know from time in the game in those organizational meetings, the medical staff always talked about duration post Tommy John. And it was like a 5 to 6 year window. I think we're getting into year almost 2 or 3 post his last one. I think it was roughly close. But I'm curious to see how long that's going to last. But I think the Yankees are definitely better off moving forward. But at the end of the day, you need your alpha males to be alpha males in October. And I think that's not – I think this is going to be a big year for them to see what Aaron Judge can do in the postseason.
Looking up, I think Fried's TJ was a long time ago.
It was in like 2015.
2015.
Because he got traded in 16, I believe.
So I'm kind of curious to see how much longer his elbow is going to hold up. And it's not a knock against him. It's just like the medical. Listening to all those conversations, we've had them you almost have them to nauseam in organizational meetings about health and this and that, and they try to predict the future. And all the medical numbers have come up that 5 or 6 year window. I know when I was with Detroit, they brought up Verlander a lot because that was obviously he's there forever. And my argument was you're talking about like a dinosaur, right? This guy's like the elite of the elite, right? He's still 42 years old, still dominating. So I said you can't really base everything off of one dude, especially a guy that's generational. He's a generational arm, a generational makeup, all that stuff. So I'm curious to see how long how his health translates to New York because Atlanta is not New York, but stuff-wise, he's definitely an upgrade from what they've had.
What you talk about Tommy John? What do you think about Shohei? Shohei's got his second Tommy John. You look at the numbers for that. You know who has the best, most productive career after second Tommy John?
Verlander,
Nate Eovaldi.
I was going to say Tommy John.
Tommy John.
Well, Tommy John. Okay.
I think Ohtani's different though because you can close him. I feel like later on in his career, I know he wants to start. He's obviously the biggest draw in the game right now. But for a guy like Ohtani, I feel like you can always close him, and you can kind of protect him a little more than starting. I think, and I think that the fact that what makes him so amazing to me is the fact that the body. You see the guys that make 30 starts a year and like what they go through, and then to turn around and you throw 7 innings, 8 innings plus whatever, and turn around and DH the next day, and then the swings you take. It's like that's like superhuman. That type of stuff doesn't happen, and you see a guy like that. And to me, I always say like, man, it would have been really cool to see him come out and close the last game of the World Series. I've been like, oh yeah, you go. He's not pitching.
Dying for
He's
it.
not
Yes.
pitching. By
It
the
was
way,
never going to happen, but Scott was begging for
Could
it.
you imagine? Like that would have been sick.
Sorry for rooting for good theater. You know?
Walker Buehler was good theater. He didn't even warm up.
He was good theater.
Well,
I
we
agree.
knew that afterwards.
Yes. So, Doug, you played with were you on the teams with Jeter and A-Rod, or
Yes.
just Jeter? Okay. So my question is, do you think that Soto wanted to be the man? Because Lindor is the man right now with the Mets, but now it's Soto, and Lindor's okay with that. He's that kind of guy. Soto was never going to be the man in New York until Judge retired. Not even close. So do you think that mattered to someone like him? Because you played with guys that felt that way.
I think it could have been a factor. I don't know him personally. I just feel like those guys are the elite guys in the game are just their makeup's different. Like I know you always hear them talk. They do everything they possibly can to stay on top, and they crave that. And like the highest paid means a lot to them. I'm not so sure about that, but I feel like it was more of like watching his face, his expressions, like that demeanor he had, that look he had against the Guardians in the ALCS was completely different after Game 2 in the World Series. I just felt like his eyes looked exhausted. He looked like I can't do anymore, and if this is what I have to do to win a championship, I don't think this is going to work. But then again, like these guys, I mean, to sign a contract, and I always go back to what can you do with 745 you can't do with 720. Like it's like at that point it's the same thing. But obviously, like New York, if he chose New York, so I think the Mets are more suited for him, in my opinion, than maybe New York, because obviously what you just said, it's already Judge's team. This way, he gets to kind of build his own thing over there with Lindor.
I want to ask a question. So I get asked a lot about how I was playing with the Yankees and the Mets. I want to ask you a question. You played with the Red Sox. So can you give a couple differences, or, what was, your biggest takeaway from both sides? Because those are two, they don't really like each other. So can you talk a little about both sides and, who you liked a little more than the other?
I played for all three, actually. So
you're a Mets too?
I was a
Okay.
Met too, and I try to wipe that from the memory, and I think most Mets fans do too. But I feel Boston, I felt like the Yankees were easier to play for than Boston. Boston was a smaller, big city. You couldn't really get away. I know I was lucky because I was with David at the time, and David kind of helped me through, and Johnny and those guys helped me through the transition. And I didn't have enough time to really kind of get wrapped up in it because I just got there and we were in the pennant race. But I felt like, and plus a guy like me, it's different because I'm a wedge breaker on the kickoff team, right? I'm not the star. So it was easier for guys like me to kind of blend in. But New York, I felt like you could get out in the city and kind of walk down the street and kind of enjoy what the city brings more so than Boston because it was on top of you. And you go tie it over to the Mets. I feel like the Mets fans, once they boo you, there's no turning back. Yankee fans will boo you, but as soon as you do something positive, like all is forgotten. So, and I had a lot of moments where Mets fans should have booed me, but I always use this story of Kaz Matsui was there and played second base.
Anal fissures.
Yes. And that, of course, you would remember that.
Yes.
But it's disgusting.
I can't.
He had him.
I remember opening day. He had a decent year his first year. He had like 270. He wasn't Hideki, right? But he was his own. He had 270 his first year in the big leagues. That's doing something.
Mm-hmm.
He tied the game in the 7th and won it with a hit in the 9th. The next day, they announced the starting lineups, and they booed him so bad. And I thought, man, there's just no turning back here. Like, this is a different animal where I'm like, my gosh, what did you do last year that was so bad to make you get booed? But I still have a lot of friends that I met in all those cities, and I didn't like going through it, but I think it helped me later in my career to kind of deal with what big cities and what big markets expect.
Well, one place you didn't get booed was Minnesota. We came up together, played minor leagues, and then in the big leagues for a long time. They're allegedly getting new ownership. I got to ask, because they asked me questions about when I was there with the poll ads, and I tell them the story when Mike Fetters had to buy us fleeces because the team said they wouldn't buy them, or remember when Terry Ryan got sold shorts and by the equipment guy, and he's like, I'm the general manager, so he had to buy a pair of shorts from the equipment manager.
I heard. I've heard.
I mean, there was all kinds of crazy. So
we'd order sandbats, and they would never order them because of the max.
Because they were too much money.
Too much money.
They were $10 more than the regular bats. That's also
true stories. Those are true stories.
Oh yeah,
Really
or going better when we used to have to go to Taco Bell on the way to the plane because we didn't really have any food on the plane.
Also a good story.
So shocker that we.
How do
go
you
to
buy
Taco
a
Bell.
team
Wow.
and then you can't pay for
like
stuff
Major
like
League.
that?
Like we felt like
It was awesome.
I remember like we used to fight with the traveling secretary all the time. Like, why? Like, is this coming out of your pocket? Like, we're not asking for. I'm asking for like a chicken sandwich on the plane. I'm not asking for filet mignon. But like it was sometimes was a little like.
But you guys came up through the Twins. That's
Correct.
all you knew. So other people were influencing you. You were like, "Whoa, this is the big leagues." I talked to Christian Yelich and JT Realmuto coming up through the Marlins. They're like, I always busted their balls because I was like, "You guys never played in AAA. They went from AA to the big leagues." They were like, "We played in Miami. That's AAA. No air conditioning on the plane." But you guys didn't know any better. So who was the one that was like chirping in your ear? And what'd you make your debut? 98.
98.
Golly, you graduated in high school in
I was
98.
12.
Dang-year-old.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
it.
appreciate y'all.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
But you go.
Good
But
year though.
who was the guy who was like, "This ain't big league"?
I think we had because we didn't sign free agents either. So like we didn't
Right.
we were like we were sheltered or held back or whatever you want to say it. But like I remember like Orlando Merced. Remember he was.
He was so nice to you.
He
You guys
loved me.
got along great.
Yeah.
Hated
Remember-
you?
I had to
No, he
pick up-
hated him. Oh, you got to tell that story.
Well, I'm
You got to tell that. Please tell that
I'm
story.
coming off foot surgery, and we did Good Morning America, where we would take ground balls and infield drills for an hour on end, while the pitchers were standing there, and TK would scream, "This is why you got to throw the ball over the plate." So I'm taking ground balls. It's me, Orlando Merced, and Ron Coomer, and like Orlando Merced is completely coming unglued. That like I'm dragging my feet and I'm messing up the dirt. You can't wear spikes. And I'm like, well, I'm not wearing tennis shoes because TK will send me down like tomorrow. But literally screaming at me for not picking up my feet. I'm like, look, man, I'm pretty new to this, but I can feel better with my opposite hand than you can with your glove hand. So let's just pump the brakes. But this stuff like that where it was like Mike Jackson. I remember every time a guy left, I'm like, man, welcome to the big leagues. You got called up. That's awesome. And we're like, we didn't know what they were talking about. And then as we went other places, I was like, I know when he went to San Fran, I was like, hey, so.
Oh no, he called me. He
it?
called me and be like, "What do you like?" And I'm like, "This is way better. They have like all this cool stuff. Like you can get whatever you want here."
Remember, we had to bring breakfast.
Yeah,
They didn't have
breakfast
feed
at
us.
spring training.
We had to send a guy.
Not even bagels and donuts.
I'll go one better.
Dude, it was
On the road in
It was
spring
great.
training.
Scones?
On the road in spring training. You go to the road game, right? You have a spread afterwards. The guy that was making the most money had to buy the spread for the entire bus. That's all we knew.
Just put some generals. Just put like 6 pies. On
Right.
each
So
house.
I got traded to the Boston, but I didn't have spring training. But my next year in spring training was with the Mets, and like we came back after a road game, and I'm like, who paid for all this food so I can thank them? They're like, the team. I'm like, I didn't know. I was like, this is great.
Dude,
Like,
it was like
we get
we didn't know
T-shirts
any
and
better.
everything for
That's
free
what I mean.
here.
Like you didn't know
we
any
still
better.
thought we were doing it right. We had no idea.
Making $110,000 a year.
Just rolling.
You were like
big money.
big cash,
Like
straight
a
just
big
like
just a rap video.
Just,
in
yeah,
Minnesota.
man. Whatever y'all get. Whatever y'all
we
want.
got uniforms too.
Yeah, we get one uniform per year. If you rip it, you're screwed though.
Oh, the jersey thing too was like, hey, can I get my? You didn't even think about asking for a jersey after the year.
This is how Major League started the movie, didn't it?
100%. 100%.
We didn't have a weight room.
Yeah.
We didn't have a weight room. We didn't have a strength coach.
We didn't have a cage.
We didn't have a cage. The cage was the baggie in Minnesota.
I thought the worst one was in Chicago in the back there. Oh my
That
God.
one was.
We didn't
not
have
it.
one.
We didn't have one.
They dropped the net over the baggie, and after games, we'd go hit
Just some flips.
flips into the net.
Side
and then
to
we
back
got one.
toss.
We got one all the way down, like where
Yeah.
like the Zamboni was, like
Yeah.
way back in the back corner. And like I remember Albert Bell was hitting in there, and he was hitting balls so hard, he was like lifting it up and moving it. And we had to like put sandbags on it.
Oh,
It was
it was
nuts.
awesome.
It was.
That's when it was real. That's when you were like, I'm in the big league.
That's when you're like, man, we've made it.
But if you think about it, like I always tell people, The thing is, so if you look at the teams we had though in the minor leagues, you had like you, Torrey, Jock Jones, Christian Guzman, Rivas. I mean, we had
Dudes.
ridiculous amount of guys that could play. Chad Allen,
With
Ortiz
Troy,
was with us.
Eddie.
I mean, we had like, dude, but we all came up together, right? And so when we all hit, we didn't know there was no difference for us. We're like, oh, we were in New Britain, we were in Fort Myers, and we were in New Britain, and we were in Salt Lake, and then boom, now we're in the big leagues, and we're like, okay, we're just, and everyone's like, I remember 2001, after 2001, they're like, what do you think about the division? And someone asked me, and I go, we're going to win it. And they go, you don't have any payroll. I'm like, so what? We're good. We win everywhere we've gone.
Ignorantly.
And then we actually
ignorantly confident.
Had the lead deep into that year, and we blew it at the end. We ran out of gas.
We're contenders now.
Yeah. And then the next year we went on and won the division by like 20 games.
I remember it was on last night, by the way.
It's just, you look back at the team we faced Oakland with in 2002, and if you looked at it then, people are like, we don't know you. But if you look at it now, you're looking at LaTroy, the most appearances in the history of, relievers or whatever it was. You caught for 48 years. I mean, you had, Koski, you had Torrey Hunter, the list goes on and on. Eddie Gordado, J.C. Romero, Brad Radke, Eric Milton, the list goes on and on. You look back at that team now, and you're like, damn, we were pretty good. We just didn't quite know it yet. But we were young, and I joke around with the Moneyball show, and every time someone pops on, you like the movie? I'm like, no, we were like, wait till the end. We're the ones that beat them.
See?
You guys
dude, we're on the same page on that.
River, you guys had Mulder, Hudson, and Zito. You had the top three arms in the game, and you still couldn't get out of the first round. I was like, we have to do a movie on us.
That's what I said.
Man,
I say it all the time, don't I?
That'd be fun.
The movie
He
trailer.
says it all the time.
I say that's the worst. I said we did Mulder on. I'm like, Mulder, that's the worst movie of all time. And he actually goes, I agree. Because he's like, I'm not in it. Because they didn't talk about him. And Tejada won the MVP that year.
Yeah, but I actually like the movie you guys are talking about better. They didn't get breakfast, but they prevailed.
That was the year we were supposed to get contracted.
Yeah.
They were supposed to clip us.
I remember Terry
Us
Ryan.
and the Expos were like, yeah, you guys are going to be gone. You're going to get dispersed to other teams.
Terry Ryan called me
we
that.
better have a good year.
Terry Ryan called me that winter. He's like, hey, I got good news and bad news. So I'm like, well, give me the bad news first. He goes, I'll give you the good news first. He goes, you want to go glove? I just don't think I'm going to be the one that's going to hand it to you. Oh. And I'm like, are you getting fired? What happened? We finally won. We lost for a decade. Where are you going? And it was like, no, we're getting contracted. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. What is that? What is that really? And then we found out, and we're on those phone calls, those with every other guy. We're getting an expansion draft and all. I'm like, we finally get good, of course, and then they're going to get rid of us. But it was a crazy, crazy time. But very lucky to come up with the guys that I came up with because of the fact that it was – because you hear the horror stories come out of college, right? Pro ball so cutthroat, right? Mm-hmm. It's just so different. I'm like, wait a minute. This group I had all the way up we were like family. And it was like this is what – maybe it's not the way it is everywhere, but I walked into a great situation. I know they're not going to go sign some big-time first baseman to play first. When I was ready – it was time to move on, and it's time to get up and get your shot. And I remember when they brought Morneau up, and I was like, I don't have hard feelings. That's how I got my shot. He's an MVP waiting to happen. I'm not stupid. And so but it was – I just wish we had a chance. Looking back, I think that team – we joked around all the time. If we just give us Ellis Burks, you give us one veteran hitter, it would make all the difference in the world for us. Or go get us one power arm, and it would have been – because I remember when the draft, it was – we could have taken Joe Mauer or – Pryor, and we're like, give us Pryor, we win the whole thing. And at the time, you understand Joe's going to be a Hall of Famer, but at the time,
but that cost me my job.
Selfishly, I was like, I just lost 1/3 of the Brat Pack that they couldn't stand. I mean, me and AJ, Denny Hawking, they couldn't stand us because we actually spoke about this stuff that was going on. This is not the big leagues. We're starting to get good. You need to start doing some stuff.
They said stop asking for breakfast.
Yeah, you guys are not allowed to eat 3 meals a day.
How dare you guys eat? You're lucky you get water. You get a saltine and like it. Carl mixing the tuna fish with his hands.
It's like that's rookie ball, right? You make
a little bit. The guy. His name was Carl. He was 85 years old. He would mix the tuna in with Tupperware, and he had Band-Aids on his hand, and he's just like.
It wasn't Tupperware. It was those big Costco mayonnaise jars. So when the mayonnaise got on, he just dumped the tuna fish in the end and just sit there. And I'm talking, he's elbow deep into this.
Good
and he's like, you want you like a sandwich? I'm like, nah, man, I'm gonna eat it. I'm gonna suck on a sweet and low packet for the game. I got it. I got it. Just just
Oh.
elbow deep into it, just
Oh.
making a
No
mess.
bueno.
God rest his soul.
Ooh,
God,
That's rough.
I don't know how you became so bougie.
You crushed that too, didn't you?
Oh, well, yeah, there was nothing else to eat. It was either a Band-Aid sandwich or nothing.
You had a nail in there.
Oh,
You're
that's fine. I was like,
that's
picking my
just like
teeth.
an onion.
You could
or
suck
something.
on a
Yeah.
Band-Aid, or you could get a saltine cracker
Oh,
and eat one
yeah.
of the
We
sandwiches.
used to
That's about
get
it.
Crushing
Doug
tuna.
never had to play in the Gulf Coast League. Y'all didn't either, but I had to play in the Gulf Coast League, the Twins, and it was so you get a Subway sub, 6-inch sub. That was it.
Yeah.
For the whole day, right? No
That's
breakfast.
that's really good, actually.
and they get you a 6-inch
Considering,
Subway.
yeah.
And well, Sunday was meatball day, so everyone wanted more than one. So we'd
Oh.
always try and sneak them. One day, our club Wayne, who was this old guy, was around forever.
Big
He
fan.
got mad because everyone was trying to get two, and he just threw them out into the middle of the court, the little kitchen, the little we ate
Open
outside.
air. Open air.
Open air
yeah.
outside, no
Are you
shade.
serious?
On the equator.
Threw 'em.
It's June.
Threw him out
On the
there,
equator.
and you would have thought that he threw out $100 bills
Oh,
because
my.
guys were like,
Mine.
"Oh yes, it was the crazy." I mean, that was just how it was.
Grabbing meatballs.
There
on
was
the
a
Meatball
ground?
sandwiches, meatball stuff.
It was a Super Bowl
Oh,
fumble in the
the
end
You
zone.
got the
Everyone-
two bread, and you're like scooping them.
Oh yeah, you're like, yes, please, yes.
Oh,
Wow.
my God.
See, that's the movie that should have been made.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll work on that. But
Yeah.
Doug, thanks for swinging by.
More
Good
you
luck
know.
in poker. We'll
Appreciate
chat
it, guys.
later, all right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sounds good.